The lobby sparkled, but the people who made it shine were invisible. Every morning, before the guests stirred in their suites and before the kitchen opened for breakfast service, a quiet army in faded uniforms pushed their carts down the carpeted hallways of the Westmont Grand Hotel. They polished mirrors until their own faces disappeared in the shine, scrubbed floors on their knees, carried trays heavier than their own children. For the guests, it was paradise. For the workers, it was survival. And for Clara Johnson, this hotel wasn't just a job. It was her life. She'd been here 22 years. She remembered when her hair was still jet black and her knees didn't ache after 12 hours on her feet. She remembered when the managers used to smile and say, "We're family here," back when family meant something. But families don't watch you scrub toilets at 60 years old and tell you you're too slow. Families don't cut your hours and then expect you to smile at every guest like your whole world isn't falling apart. Families don't pretend you're invisible until the moment you speak up. The trouble started on a Tuesday. Clara was cleaning the 12th floor when she heard a thud from the next room. She rushed over and found Ana Torres, a new hire from El Salvador, slumped on the floor with a mop still in her hand. Ana whispered, "I can't breathe." By the time the paramedics arrived, Anna's blood pressure was through the roof. The doctor later said dehydration and exhaustion. But when Clara told the manager what had happened, his only response was, "Did the guests see?" That was the moment something snapped inside Clara. That Friday, Clara invited a few coworkers to her apartment, a 2-bedroom with peeling paint and a landlord who never fixed the heat. They sat around her kitchen table, coffee mugs in hand, voices low so the neighbors wouldn't overhear. It was Ana, just out of the hospital, her wrist still bandaged from the IV. It was Marisol, a single mother who sometimes brought her teenage son to the hotel just so he wouldn't be home alone. And it was Darnell, a dishwasher who'd been fired once already for lateness, then rehired when they couldn't keep up with the workload. They talked about the hours, the injuries, the wages that never matched the promises. Marisol said, "My son asked me why I never come to his basketball games. What am I supposed to tell him? That cleaning up after rich people matters more than him?" And Clara, her hands wrapped around her mug, said the word none of them dared before: union. The silence that followed was heavy. The hotel caught wind of the whispers before long. They always do. First came the sudden staff appreciation events. Free pizza in the break room, raffle tickets for a flat-screen TV. Then came the memos. We value open communication, no need for third-party involvement. Then came the surveillance. Managers lingering longer in the laundry room, security cameras that seemed to tilt overnight toward the workers' lounge. One morning, Clara clocked in and found a poster pinned above the time clock. "Unions take your dues. Unions take your freedom." She tore it down, crumpled it in her fist. That piece of paper was just ink and lies. But the time card in her other hand, stamped with her name, her hours, her worth, that was the truth. That time card became her symbol. She kept the old ones folded in her apron pocket, like proof that her life wasn't just numbers in someone else's payroll system. The organizing grew quiet, careful. Meetings held at laundromats, at church basements, in the back booth of a diner where the waitress knew to keep the coffee coming and the lights low. Clara wasn't naive. She'd lived through enough to know the cost of raising your voice. But every time she thought about backing down, she remembered Anna's collapse, Marisol's son, Darnell's hollow eyes when he talked about getting written up for asking for gloves. They started small. A petition for better protective gear, signed in secret. A demand for guaranteed breaks. Each time, management ignored them. But each time, more signatures came. There's a certain power in realizing you're not alone. And if you're still listening right now, that means you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because somewhere in your own life, you've been told to stay quiet, to be grateful, to endure. And you know the cost of silence. So before we go further, hit that subscribe button, share this story, because silence is how these systems survive, and we're not here to stay silent. The firings started next, quiet, one by one, never enough at once to draw headlines. A young bellhop written up for unprofessional behavior, a cook accused of theft with no proof. And then, Darnell. They said he'd been late again. Darnell, who slept on the bus just to make sure he'd never miss another shift. Darnell, who showed up 2 hours early some days just to be safe. When Clara saw him packing his things in a cardboard box, she felt something inside her chest harden like stone. "This is how they do it," he said, voice low. "They pick us off till we're scared to breathe." But Clara wasn't scared. She was furious. Late one night, Anna knocked on Clara's door. She held a folder so tightly her knuckles were white. Inside were copies of internal memos, emails between managers and corporate headquarters, instructions on how to monitor potential agitators, lists of workers labeled high risk for organizing. And right there, in black and white, was Clara's name. "Who gave you this?" Clara asked. Anna swallowed. "A friend in payroll. Said they couldn't watch it happen anymore." With the evidence in hand, Clara and the others called for a strike vote. They gathered in the church basement, folding chairs lined up in rows, the air electric with fear and hope. Hands went up, one after another. Yes, yes, yes. The strike was set for May 1st. Clara barely slept. She ironed her uniform one last time, even though she knew she might never wear it again. She laid her stack of old time cards on the table, running her fingers over the faded ink. Each one was proof. I was here. I gave my hours. I gave my life. And tomorrow, she would give her voice. They marched onto the sidewalk at dawn, picket signs raised high, chants echoing down the street. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. Cars honked in support, passers-by clapped. For once, the workers were visible. But the hotel was ready. Buses pulled up, unloading replacement workers. Police lined the sidewalks, hands on batons. By noon, management had secured a court injunction limiting the picket line to 10 people at a time. By 2 o'clock, 3 organizers were arrested for disrupting business. By evening, the news cameras had turned away. And by the next morning, the hotel lobby sparkled as if nothing had ever happened. Some workers were reinstated quietly weeks later under pressure. Others never returned. Anna moved to another city. Marisol cut her hours and took a second job just to survive. Darnell started driving trucks. And Clara? She stayed. Her body ached, her hours shrank, but she stayed. Because to her, leaving meant surrender. A year later, a labor watchdog group released a report exposing the Westmont Grand's union-busting tactics. The leaked memos became public record. The arrests were challenged in court. It wasn't the victory they had dreamed of, but it was a crack. And sometimes a crack is how the light gets in. Clara kept one of her old time cards framed above her kitchen table. Faded ink, stamped with her name. Beneath it, she taped the headline of the report that bore proof of what they'd endured. And when her granddaughter asked why she kept it there, Clara smiled sadly. So you'll know. So you'll never let them tell you your time don't matter. The hotel lobby still sparkles. Guests still check in, oblivious. But the story of the strike that wasn't heard, it lingers. In the whispers of workers in break rooms across the country, in the petitions signed quietly on lunch breaks, in the eyes of anyone who has ever dared to demand more than survival. And if this story reached you, don't let it end here. Share it, talk about it, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because stories like these die in silence. And silence is exactly what the powerful are counting on.